Coming up, Proton launch.
Penny.
And China's rover is not quite dead yet. Plus, we take a look at what the Martian government may look like in the future. Stay with us. Tomorrow begins now.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. Got the flag up now. You can see the stars and
Private space station.
And welcome to Spacevidcast, episode 7.09 for Saturday, March 22nd, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is my beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented wife, Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we'll be her hosts for this episode. Now, before we get started, we did want to say a huge thank you to the Spacevidcast Premier members. These are the people who help make Spacevidcast go. They've contributed at least $10 to make this episode happen. You can get more information at patreon.com/spacevidcast. Let's get straight into space news. The first thing up is a Proton rocket has delivered the Express AT-1 and AT-2 satellites into orbit. Here's the launch coverage. Overloaded the engines overloaded the microphone a little bit there, didn't they? So that Proton launched on March 15th at 23:08 Coordinated Universal Time from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. It delivered the pair of Russian satellites, Express AT-1 and AT-2. Those are communication satellites for Russia. Now, if you're looking at the information bar on the right-hand side, you'll notice it is not the traditional liquid oxygen or with RP1 or liquid hydrogen. Instead, it's N2O4 and N2O4, which is nitrogen peroxide. Easy for me to say.
I was just saying, you can do it.
Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Well, the next one's going to be fun.
Yep, ready?
Followed by UDMH, which is unsymmetrical dimethylene hydrazine. Ooh, actually, I think I did that one okay. I was really worried. Those are actually hypergolic fuels, and what that means is that rather than needing an igniter, for example, if you watch a Falcon 9 launch, there's this green spark before the engines actually come alive. Mm-hmm. That's the igniter. That's TTED. These don't need that. When you take N2O4 and UDMH and combine them, they automatically ignite. They're hypergolic, and so it is also very, very toxic, which is fun when they had the Proton crash back down.
Yes.
Do not approach a crashing Proton. That would be
much.
very, very bad. It could interact with you in a not so fun way. So anyhow, that was the Proton rocket. It actually, in the infographic, I think it said it had been around since 1965. And while that is true, that specific configuration was a Proton M rocket, which is a little bit more modern. But I thought its heritage is based on the Proton, so I gave the full.
Is that an M for modern?
Proton Moderns. They actually might be. I have no idea.
Sorry.
Anyhow, that took place on March 15th. But big news. So this isn't necessarily spaceflight related, and we kind of tend to focus on in the show what it takes to get humans to space,
right.
what will it take to get humanity to be a spacefaring civilization. But this is just really cool science, and so I thought we'd bring it up. And that is the Big Bang theory. Has kind of been proven with what I'm calling the gravity wave addition, right?
Ooh, yeah. I like that. Mm-hmm. That's very good. In early 20th century, Edwin Hubble discovered that galaxies were moving away from each other, and the further away they were from each other, the faster they were actually moving, or the further away that they were in general, not from each other necessarily.
And you do that kind of using this similar concept of Dopplers. As you move, you shift light towards red or blue, and so he's able to see the shift in light.
Right. Theories were that the universe was expanding at some point, and that they had actually been very, very close, so that they were. That's how you could tell that they were moving away, that they were very, very close to each other. In the 1960s, something was discovered called the cosmic microwave background radiation. And the idea is that it was a similar temperature that sort of permeates the entire galaxy. And the idea was that two objects at separate ends of the universe, how could they possibly be the same temperature unless they were at the same location at the same time at some point in the past?
Sure.
If that makes any sense. The origin of the temperature was traced to a time when matter started to bunch itself together to right around 38,000 years after the Big Bang. This was called inflation. This is the inflation theory, if I remember correctly. Right? Yeah, inflation is the best group of theories, and we have to explaining what happened between the Big Bang and in those 38,000 years. In the 1960s, we measured that the cosmic microwave background was not totally smooth, but it actually had some ripples going on in it. The inflation theory says that this is a result of quantum fluctuations that intensified as the universe expanded so fast it created these ripples in the actual fabric of space-time. Another way of saying that inflation predicted the light polarization signature. Oh wait, I wrote this totally wrong.
So basically, what happened here
Yes.
is that after the Big Bang, we have the Big Bang, and it basically this matter is moving faster than the speed of light.
Right.
And so we're creating. Actually, go back to that graphic that we just had up. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So it's creating these ripples in space time, right?
Well, it left a signature on the protons.
And so actually what it's doing, we see these ripples, and it actually creates that signature, these rippling signatures on that background radiation, that cosmic microwave background radiation that we had measured before. And we should actually, I think it was like, thank you. By the way, that there's a great explanation of this at phdcomics.com/ all that other stuff. But right now it's on the homepage. And this comic actually does a fantastic job of explaining it. But basically, it's these ripples that go out, and we needed a way to measure this, and we hadn't been able to do that. So I think it was Einstein. I don't remember, but like 100 years ago, I think it was Einstein who said, "Yeah." There should be these ripples out there. Well, now we've finally been able to show and prove, yep, here are those ripples.
Right.
Which means this is, and there you go. Here are those gravitational ripples.
It's so cool. The Bicep 2 that was in the South Pole has been studying the polarized light in the cosmic microwave background, and they're the ones who found the signature. Bicep 2, of course, stands for background imaging of cosmic extragalactic polarization, which also is not easy to say, so now we're even.
So, proving the Big Bang Theory is basically what it's come down to.
Yay!
Taking the Big Bang Theory and making it less theory, more fact.
Yes.
And it's nice to, you need to back these things up with actual data, right? You can't just go, oh, well, this is a theory, so it must be true. You go, okay, well, we need to be able to back this up with evidence, and it needs to be repeatable, and, we're getting there. We're trying to figure this out. And looking at this kind of data is very difficult to do, but understanding our past helps us understand and create a better future, in my humble opinion. So, really cool discovery there. So, moving back into the human spaceflight realm of things, SpaceX's CRS, which is the commercial resupply missions, number 3 has been delayed until March 30th, but it is on track. Now, it was delayed because there was some oil found in the trunks.
The
blankets in the trunk section, and it's been cleared by NASA to go up to the International Space Station at this point, so no earlier than March 30th, barring weather or anything else like that. And one of the things, and Tim gave me, our director Dutta gave me a hard time before the show. He's like, "Oh, you're going to talk about this again?" But it's a big deal. It has landing legs. This rocket has landing legs. It's going to look. They just look cool.
Yeah, they do.
There are 4 landing legs on the bottom of the first stage rocket. And actually, you had mentioned that Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson wasn't understanding why.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of, I don't know what landing legs on a rocket are for.
Which is funny, because when you think about it, not only does it help reduce the cost, right? You put the landing legs on the rocket, you bring the rocket back. There's another great shot of the landing legs. When you see the shot on the SpaceX webcast and you're looking at the rocket and you see the size of the logo, note that the top of the landing leg doesn't come above the C. But the landing legs are massive, right? You see the ladder, you can actually fit an entire human like underneath that part of the rocket right now. So these things are huge. Gives you an idea of scale for the rocket itself. Anyhow, the landing legs are important not just for reusability here on Earth, but consider this: when you go to Mars, how are you going to land? Are you going to use an airbag system?
Right.
Are you going to use a sky crane? Or are you going to use a propulsive landing system? Well, if you use propulsive landing, you're going to need legs. Now, in the Apollo era, we used legs that were permanently attached to the vehicle, but the moon didn't really have atmosphere to burn those legs back off, so it didn't matter. So we had the descent stage with the legs permanently kind of outstretched. Well, that's not going to work so well in Mars, so how do you land? So this is, I look at it as a way of SpaceX constantly testing different ways for humans to get to Mars, right? SpaceX has said, we're going to Mars, and this is just one more step in them making it there. So really cool. March 31st at 0250 Coordinated Universal Time if you want to watch the live coverage on SpaceX.com/webcast. China's lunar rover, it's not dead, but not doing so hot either. Here's actually, this was it moving off of the lander. I think it was Chang'e. This is Yutu, the Yutu, Y-U-T-U, or Jade Rabbit. It goes into these sleeping hibernation periods. This is the third time it's awoken since December 14th. Basically what happens is we go into lunar night, so it gets really, really freakishly cold on the moon. So they hibernate the vehicle so that it doesn't get damaged and so it can survive lunar night. Well, there's a mechanical failure on U2's drive system, which means while it can still do science and it can still do stuff, it just can't move anywhere. And that's a bit of a bummer because they wanted to move it over to a crater, actually, kind of into the nearby area. And unfortunately, it's only been able to move the 100 to 110 meters that it's already moved, and that's it. It's done. It's stuck there essentially forever. So they'll be able to do some stuff for a little bit until they lose the rest of the vehicle, but that's pretty much it. The rover's not dead, but darn close. Although still, this is the first time in something like 30 years where we've been able to do a soft landing on the moon. Yeah. So congratulations to China for that.
Heck yeah.
Right? I mean, that's pretty awesome that they've been able to do that. And that brings up another, actually, remember that because there's kind of this Moon-Mars debate that we've been having on Spacevidcast with regards to should we go to the moon first or should we go to Mars first? Who knows? Orbital's looking to drop the United Launch Alliance lawsuit.
Yeah, so Orbital Sciences has these engines, and you're going to have to help me out with this one a little bit.
So they currently have the AJ-26 engines.
Okay.
Actually, perfect. Thank you, Doug. That's one of the engines that they use. That is a Russian-made engine.
Okay, and it's a kerosene rocket engine.
It's an RP-1, so rocket propellant 1 and liquid oxygen-based engine.
Right. So this is the engine that they use. And they only have enough of them they have a sufficient supply of those engines for their own launches that they have on the docket already through 2016.
Yeah, keep in mind, these engines were made in the 60s, right? These are old engines. These are old school Russian engines.
But they don't have any more than that. And nobody's really making them for the most part. And so they've been looking for alternatives. And a comparable alternative is the also Russian-made RD-180s, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay, and ULA...
United Launch Alliance,
which is Boeing Lockheed, is using the RD-180 engines, but they are exclusive to them, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're Russian engines, but right now they're pretty much only for ULA, yeah.
Right. So Orbital is trying to talk to United Launch Alliance saying, hey guys, we totally like those engines and we could totally use them. Is it okay if we totally use them? And United Launch Alliance is like, no. They said,
so there's a lawsuit.
We got them from Russia. You can get them from Russia too. And Orbital saying, yeah, but I don't think Russia really wants to make them anymore, you guys. So it would be really cool if we just sort of use yours. And United Launch Alliance is like, no. So Orbital brought a lawsuit against United Launch Alliance saying that it was just, I don't know exactly what it was saying.
It's keeping them out. So,
because I was going to say monopoly, but that's not the right word. But ULA is basically protecting all of the RD-180s and saying that Orbital can't use them. Nobody's really happy about it all the way around. So Orbital right now has dropped the lawsuit against ULA. They're going to try to privately negotiate for the right to purchase some Russian-made RD-180 engines. This original suit was filed in June of last year, and it could actually be brought back should Orbital not be able to find another kerosene engine, American-made or otherwise, I suppose, that is suitable for their needs.
Right. And some people might say, well, the Merlin engine is a kerosene liquid oxygen engine, but it is nowhere near, like, they're using, these engines are F1 grade kind of engines. These were for the old N1 rocket that was going to bring Russian cosmonauts to the moon. These things are massively powerful.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's kind
of
like
the Merlin
saying
engine,
that
as combined in a 9 octaweb structure, is powerful, but you need 9 of them as opposed to 1 of them here.
Right. It's kind of like saying, well, an RC car has an engine and my real car has an engine. So
Right.
they're engines. Why
Right.
can't I just use them?
Exactly.
It's not the same thing.
So they're working on it. They're working out the details of the lawsuit, and actually you saw in that slow motion footage that was the Antares launch vehicle with 2 of the engines that they use right now. So we'll see. They're going to privately negotiate and see what they can come up with to continue the use of Antares, and that's used for the NASA commercial resupply missions. The same thing that SpaceX is launching for. They're going to be launching May 6th. Of this year. So right after SpaceX launches, you're going to see an orbital launch of Antares up to the International Space Station doing a cargo run as well on that Antares vehicle.
Yay.
And before we go into break, I thought this was actually kind of cool. NASA has released a Deep Space Network website. And actually, Dada, I have this on the Skype input. I've got a live view. Let me go in here and actually, so we can go in and I should have been more ready for this. Hang on. There's the shot of the site. So there you go. If this is at eyes.nasa.gov/DSN for Deep Space Network, and then you can actually go through and you can see what the Deep Space Network is currently doing. And I can click on any one of these. So I click over here, and I can see that in Madrid, the Antenna 54 is currently talking to Juno, which is 322.99 million kilometers away. And you can actually see some pretty cool information about each one of these. So we go over to Goldstone Antenna 14. It's currently looking at Stereo B, 303 million kilometers. One of these I thought was looking at. We got Messenger out there. So Voyager's not active. When I was looking at it earlier, we had communications with Voyager. It's just really cool to be able to see in real time what's going on the Deep Space Network. And again, that's at eyes.nasa.gov/DSN. And on a really related note, this site right here, this is ISS Live. This was a pretty cool website, which you could get at spacestationlive.nasa.gov. This gave you live information from the International Space Station. For example, the current timeline for the astronauts. You could see actually different consoles and what they were doing. There was live feeds from the space station. You see this little thing bouncing back and forth on the bottom? ISS Live will be retired in 2 weeks, and that's been up for like a good week, so it hasn't got much life left in it. So this website will be going away. My hope is that it will be replaced with something else, or it's kind of a generic answer from NASA saying, look, the group that was funding this can't fund it anymore. If we can find funding somewhere else, we might keep it up. But I don't know if this is something where external funding comes into play, where maybe we can create a Kickstarter campaign to keep the site live or something cool like that, or if it needs to come from a NASA division to keep, if it must be government funded. I don't know if they are allowed to take external funding like that. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about what our next Martian government, or I suppose would be our first Martian government,
yes.
what that government's going to look like. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
Wow, right into us. So before we get on to our main topic of Martian governments, I wanted to say a quick thank you to all of the Spacevidcast producers who help make this segment of Spacevidcast go. Now, a Spacevidcast producer is someone who's spent anywhere between $5 or more on this specific episode. So these are the people who have brought this episode to you this week at patreon.com/SpaceVidcast. So a huge thank you to all the producers. So we've been talking a little bit about the moon, right? And should we go to the moon or should we go to Mars? And certainly about moving humans to the next frontier.
Right.
Where should that be? How should we get there? But it was brought up when we were watching Cosmos last week, I think. It was brought up, and I don't remember who brought it up.
I don't remember either.
Terrible of me, but I'm sorry I forgot. But someone brought up that they wanted to see... or we should talk about what the government on Mars is going to look
I
like.
know who it was. It was Monson.
Okay, great. So I thought that was actually a really great idea, and we figured we should talk about this. And the easy answer here is, what's the government on Mars going to look like? The easy answer is, at first, it's going to look like whatever the colonists bring with them, like if it's the U.S. that goes there, it's just going to be a U.S. colony with U.S. rules exactly like the U.S. But traditionally, if you look at history and kind of learn from history, what generally happens is once the colony becomes self-sufficient, it usually breaks away from the
Everything
parent.
that they've
Yep,
known.
exactly. So I'm kind of looking at this from okay, what happens after the breakaway moment? Assuming there is a breakaway moment, what does that government look like? What does Mars look like?
Well, and I said that, it sort of depends on a lot of different things. The idea being, is it a government agency that's landing on Mars? And so do they have all of the government indoctrination?
Like NASA. Is it NASA landing on Mars?
Sure. Is
And
it
creating
NASA
the
landing
colony?
on Mars?
Yep.
Exactly. And creating a colony? Or is it more private? Like SpaceX, for instance, who gets there and starts creating the colony and what have you. I think that'll be different types of people in general, just to start. Then you start getting into, well, is North America there as well as China is there as well as India is there, and so you have all of the different sorts of people coming from completely different kinds of not government agencies, but government philosophies, I suppose, all sort of commingling. And then would they band together to try and create their own government as a Martian government? Or would they say, no, it's cool. You guys are over there. We're in this camp. You guys kind of just stick out over there. We're going to create our own stuff.
Well, I think at first it's going to be a pure fight for survival.
Sure.
Right? Because it's going to be whatever you can do to become self-sufficient.
Right.
I think
Absolutely.
that's going to be screw the rules. It's time to survive.
Right.
I think that's going to happen for a while. It's going to be hard, right? I mean, it's a harsh environment.
But like you said, once you're self-sufficient, right? Once you, whatever it is, a couple generations in, right? And you are able to somehow grow crops and you have domesticated animals or whatever it is. Once you get to that point where you don't have to rely on Earth to send supplies anymore. You are completely self-sufficient. You are your own people. Maybe Earth is blown up. I don't know. Then what do you do?
Earth is blown up. I hope not.
I hope not too. But the concept still is there. You are completely cut ties from Earth in every single way.
Right.
Now what?
Martian independence.
Right. And
I think it's going to depend a little bit on what the colonies on Mars look like.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have, say, one giant colony where everyone's located, it will probably be at that point one giant government,
Sure,
right? Because
absolutely.
everyone's there. But if we end up spreading out, much like we have here on Earth, and we've got a colony over here, and a colony over here, and a colony over here, there's a distinct possibility that each colony will have kind of its own subset of rules.
Right.
So then, are we going to have one kind of overarching government for all of Mars and then independent colonies with their own independent rules?
Right.
Or are we just going to have independent colonies with their own set of rules, no overarching anything, and you just go wherever that makes sense?
I think we also talked a little bit about it. It also sort of depends on how much of Mars is really, really habitable. At least, sort of
Right now,
at
none of
first.
it.
Right, but I mean, when you're starting to settle and you're trying to figure out where you want to go, where you want to land, are you all aiming for the same sort of equilateral area, or does somebody really want to go far out this way? Can you go way further over here, and so then all these sort of patches of people start popping up, or do you all sort of have to be in the same sort of area, and therefore you do create a larger colony of all of these people from Earth? Does that?
Yeah, and actually, Astro and Music says Wild West times 1,000.
Yeah,
actually
it could
very
be.
similar, because you had to when you're in the Wild West, or when you're pilgriming anywhere,
Right.
you had to essentially follow the water.
Right.
So you couldn't just go anywhere. You had to go where you had life-sustaining elements to
Right.
keep you alive, and
Right.
if you went too far off that beaten path,
You were SOL.
You were dead.
Sorry.
So that could happen on Mars too,
Mm-hmm.
except that Mars is so hostile
Right.
as compared to anything we have here on Earth. It's so hostile that doesn't matter. Because
Right.
I mean, maybe there's some radiation protection if you go really, really deep,
Right.
and you burrow underground. In certain areas, will just offer the ability for you to have to dig less. So maybe not. So you're right. What's going to happen in all of those regards?
Mm-hmm.
But then, so Mars has declared their independence. Yay, Mars! So does this become a new human utopia? from a government. Well, I mean, maybe I took that a step too far, but
Maybe
right,
a little bit.
Jump the shark.
I think it's a little bit more like a new human Burning Man 365.
Could be.
Right? I mean, I think that's a closer analogy. And some people that is utopia, I guess, but I don't, just a thought.
I mean, it is a little bit early to decide what the what am I trying to say? The architecture of the government will actually look like.
Right.
We're not. I think that's going to flush itself out.
Yeah.
Over time when you're there, what's going to be necessary when you first get there versus what's going to be necessary after Mars is terraformed, assuming we're able to terraform it,
Right.
versus, kind of some of those in-between states will be different things. And I think that what we're going to see is probably a rapid shift in power and government on the Martian colonies as those needs rapidly change with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because if it takes 100 years to terraform Mars,
Yes.
then you're over that 100 years, your needs are going to change 2 or 3 times
Right.
from point A to point F or Z or whatever you want
Right.
to call it. So that will be kind of interesting. But then even outside of that, we've been talking about the legal aspect of Mars, who owns what.
You know what I just thought of? You know what I can't believe I hadn't thought about this before. You just said that it theoretically could take 100 years to terraform Mars, right? What if by the time that we get to Mars and we've broken away from all of government on Earth and what have you, we've also already figured out how to live well past 100 years old,
Okay.
right? Because when you were traveling across the wild west in America and you weren't living that long anyhow,
Sure.
right? You already had those sort of
I
limitations.
don't know what the maximum median age was, but we'll say 40.
Sure, but
50?
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's high, maybe it's low. I don't know.
Right, but you died at 50 or you died at 60
Sure.
or what have you because your body was already naturally breaking down. So what if we've already figured out how to live much longer? Do you think the turnover for government and needs and what have you would be turning over as fast?
That's
Do
a
you
good
see what I
question.
mean?
Well, that's
Because
actually
people wouldn't be dying quite as quickly. You wouldn't have all of those elderly people to take care of, all of that stuff during that same time period.
Kurzweil would be proud of you.
Yes.
That actually same issue could happen here on Earth too.
Right?
So
Absolutely.
if you're living longer, do the needs of the government change with it?
Right.
Or maybe that's something that happens because this is there could be a clean slate community, right? Or a clean slate colony where you can say, look, most governments were made before we had the level of technology that we have now.
Right.
It's time to make a new government with the idea of rapid change, rapid and instant access to information, and the unique needs of Mars. Maybe it's time to make a new government based on that. No idea. I have no idea what that would look like.
Right, and the crazy new longevity that we have of humans.
And the crazy new longevity that humans would have. And I think that seems like a reasonable thing. It seems like, maybe I'm mistaken, but it seems like humans are slowly living to older and older ages.
Well, yeah, we already are anyway, but I mean, we are, I'm sure we're creating technology to try and help us live longer, healthier lives, so that the big joke being that 60 is the new 30, that kind of thing, that eventually 100 will be the new 30. So you're as healthy as what a current human would be at 30 years old as you are at 100 years old. And that, you're not dying until 200 or 300 years old. I mean, that's going to create a lot of...
Actually, that's going to create a huge need for human settlement of other alien bodies. For example,
we
if
ain't
humans
dying off,
on Earth don't die off
and we
for
just keep
300
creating them.
years, and we keep creating them at the same level, imagine the population that's going to happen. Now, there have been talks of overpopulating the planet forever, so maybe it won't actually happen. But there is a possibility of, as humans live longer and longer and longer, and we continue to have children at the same pace, assuming that maintains, which
Right.
it may not. But assuming those two things hold true, we're going to need to get to Mars, get to the moon, get to Enceladus,
We
Titan.
literally just need to offload people.
We need to offload humanity into other spaces so that we don't destroy our own planet, our
Yeah.
home planet. So someone had an interesting point. 1 over Alpha said, at some point, people could genetically modify themselves to live on Mars as it is without the need to terraform. Maybe, but we have yet to find life on Mars. And if life naturally has been unable to sustain itself on Mars, a human-generated genetic modification may not work either. Life is impressive. Life can live just about anywhere. I mean, it is we are consistently amazed at where life is able to actually live.
Yeah.
Except Mars. It just doesn't seem to be there. At least life as we know it, or life as we've looked at it. Maybe it is there and we just haven't found it. That's completely possible too.
Yeah.
But if nature has been unable to do it, I'm not 100% sure humans will be successful in that either. And Aerospec says we'll have more old people to think about. So what do you guys think? What's the government on Mars going to look like? And let's break this into sections, right? So the government right away. So we land on Mars. What's the government going to look like if NASA lands there? What's the government going to look like if China lands there? And what's the government going to look like if SpaceX lands there first? You know, in those 3 different scenarios. The next scenario is, okay, we've been there for 100 years, right? We've forgotten whoever landed there first. It's no longer, it's generations old at that point.
Right.
So it's not pertinent to the youngins
Right.
that are there. So what do their needs entail? What do they need from a government versus the government that was there right in the beginning?
Right.
And then let's move forward another few hundred years. What does the government look like then when it's everyone else is long dead?
Right.
You've been there for a while. Look, Mars is now terraformed. Like
Right.
you can walk outside.
Right.
You don't need any weird breathing apparatus.
It's just like Earth now.
It's just
Earth 2.
Earth-esque.
Sure.
Right? So you can live on your own. There's flowing water and trees. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It is Earth 2.0, as you
Right.
said. What does the government for that look like? And again, it's a little bit earlier to kind of figure some of these things out, but it's still a fun exercise to kind of play with. So leave your comments on youtube.com/SpaceVidcast or on SpaceVidcast proper, SpaceVidcast.com, or we also accept comments on our Patreon page, patreon.com/SpaceVidcast. We'd love to hear from you. And speaking of comments, when we come back from break, we're going to be talking about comments from last week's show when we were talking about
All different kinds of things. And the moon.
the moon. We're
Mostly
talking
the
about the
moon.
moon. We're talking mostly about the
Have
moon.
we forgotten about
Have we forgotten about the moon? That's hilarious. I legitimately forgot. Have we forgotten about the moon? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Can't believe I forgot.
1, 0. Liftoff.
The fleet of space shuttles were doing amazing things in space.
We've got all your space geekery right here.
Stupid moon. Before we get started with last week's comments, I'd like to thank all the SpaceVidcast patrons who helped make this episode happen. A SpaceVidcast patron is anyone who's contributed $1 or more to this episode. And you can get more information on how to become a SpaceVidcast patron at patreon.com/SpaceVidcast. And a quick reminder, we are funded by you. We don't have huge ads in this show. We are not a giant television show. We are a lot like your local PBS station if you're in the U.S., where viewers like you make SpaceVidcast happen, and we have different goals on Patreon, and we really would love to reach those goals. I'd love to see us reach a level where we could do some really cool things and traveling the country and giving you great launch coverage and just an epic view of the universe. So please consider helping us out at patreon.com/SpaceVidcast. All right, let's get into some comments from last week's show. The first comment comes from Glacius Blue, who says, I think the moon is very important, but Mars and moon will be sought by different companies. SpaceX is dedicated to Mars, but you have Bigelow, Golden Spike, and others who are after the moon. However, with so much focus on Mars, it seems we're lacking a goal of an easier and cheaper first stepping stone of the moon. So, and he went on with if you do spoil Cosmos, remember that it's a week delayed in the UK. So we try not to spoil Cosmos. There is no spoilers for Cosmos. It is the universe. So, but that wasn't in the note. So, yeah, different companies looking at the moon versus Mars. That makes sense, right? SpaceX seems laser focused on Mars. I'd love to see a SpaceX company laser focused on the moon with the amount of momentum that SpaceX has right now. I don't really see it. But, that's just maybe because some of these other companies are early on.
Right.
And if you look at SpaceX, 5-10 years ago,
Yeah.
you could say the same thing. So maybe we'll actually get there. But yeah, I would like to see something on the moon as well. I don't feel like humanity just has to go to Mars. There's no we went to the moon in the 60s and 70s. We put humans there, and a lot of people are like, okay, been there, done that. No. I mean, yeah, we went there, we did
Flags
that.
and footprints don't count as been there, done that.
No,
when you go on vacation and you go to Greece and you get off the plane, you don't stand at the airport and go, "Cool, did that." Get on the plane and go home.
You wouldn't
That's
even
not a thing.
It'd be even worse than that. It would be someone else went there in the past.
I suppose.
And you go, well, someone's been there, so that we're good.
So we don't need to
We
go.
out. We out.
It's cool.
No, absolutely
That's
not.
not a thing.
No, we need to establish human colonies on the moon, human colonies on Mars. Those are the first steps to getting humanity out to the stars. That's just the first step. That's not where we stop. That's where we start. And we need to get in the mentality of these are our next stepping stones, and where do we go from here? Because humanity is awesome enough to explore the cosmos. We are not stuck to just the Earth. We are the first species who can get off this rock and go explore the universe. So, wow, that was very soapboxy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it to go quite that much. Okay. Anyhow, there you go. This one, geez, this is long. Stephen, this is a long one. Or Stephen Thompson, I think it's Stephen. A lunar base will start with just research, but with this tourism, mining, and manufacturing, it will be able to grow into a colony, possibly even an independent colony. Ooh, that was timely.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. I don't see that happening on Mars, though. I suspect that as people actually go to Mars, that they would just increase people's awareness that Mars is a unique planet and not one we should try to remake to be like Earth. There will be some tourism eventually, but mining will be done on the moon and asteroids, and manufacturing will be done in space or on the moon. All Mars has is it's Mars. And if we discover any sort of life on Mars, there will only be scientific bases there, like Antarctica. Okay. I guess I don't see why we couldn't make Mars something. You could make the same argument for the moon. Buzz Aldrin said, we've been to the moon. I forgot.
Magnificent desolation.
Magnificent. I'm like, awesome something. Magnificent desolation, right? That's how he described the moon. I think that's a great phraseology for that. Magnificent desolation. Yeah. But, I mean, how's that any different than Mars?
Right?
I guess.
Or pretty much any other planet. Just basically saying, like, it's not already like Earth, we shouldn't go there. It's kind of crap.
Well, there is the argument to be made that the moon is 3 days away.
Right.
Mars is not.
Right.
Other planets are even worse.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, it's way easy for us to, let's say, we were talking about this not that long ago. You want to take a 2-week vacation to the lunar colony.
Right.
Great. 2-week vacation, right? 1 week in travel, 1 week you're on the moon.
Right.
And during travel, that's where you take care of the space sickness part, right? Hopefully. And you enjoy your 2-week vacation on the moon. You go, yay, I did the moon. All right, now I want to take a vacation to Mars. That is a multi-year vacation. That's not a thing that's going to happen.
Or at least in a way that would make any sort of sense for you to be there, because then it would be you travel months and months and months and months and months and months and months. You get there, you go, that was cool. You get back on the ship, and months and months and months and months and months and months back.
So that could make the argument for Stefan's, like, it's only going to be it's only going to be scientific colonies. But there is a possibility that people will just want to go to be the pioneers.
Right.
We saw that in the New World. I think that's part of the human spirit, if I may, that we yearn to explore. And some people have that, some people don't. There's nothing right or wrong with that. But some people just want to go out there and try something new and do something different and do the thing that no one else has ever done before. Some people want to climb Mount Everest. A lot of people died climbing Mount Everest. Right? So that is just a very regular thing. That's part of humanity.
Right.
So it's completely possible that that's what's going to happen on Mars too. So there you go. All right, the next one. I lost my place. Oh, here we go. This one comes from Matt. Matt says, do we currently have a fully enclosed bioenvironment on Earth that can sustain humans without resupply? And have people completed isolation testing in it? Yeah, it's called Earth. Earth itself. No, I mean, it's a valid point, Matt. We tried Biosphere 2 for a while, and that was not the most successful thing ever, right? We do have Antarctic stations, but they're not completely self-contained. But I don't think we need to go for complete isolation.
Right.
That's not how it's going to be on the moon, and that's not how it's going to be on Mars. You will be able to get out and stretch your legs, so to speak. You'll have to get in a spacesuit.
Right.
But at least you can go and walk around and do something, and do some exploring, and you're not cooped up into a little tin can.
Right.
Now, for Mars, you're cooped up in that can for months on end. We have done those tests. That test is
Mars 500.
Mars 500. We have tested to make sure that people can stay in a spacecraft for that long and not kill each other. That we can do. Then you get on Mars, you should get a little bit more legroom once you're out on Mars.
Yeah.
So I think we're actually at the point where we can do this without killing each other.
I think so.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you might die because it's that hard.
You can't just throw, it's not going to be the real world versus road rules MTV style, okay?
Well, they're trying for that too.
Yeah, this is true, but I mean, there should be a good amount of psychological testing that goes into the people who are going to participate in these sorts of things, at least at first. You don't want to just take 6 strangers, throw them together on Mars, and see what happens next with a bunch of cameras. Mars One.
Mars One.
Yeah.
Talking to you, Mars One. Sandforce says, I completely agree. We'll just end the comment there.
All right.
I think our focus should be Mars, but the moon should be the proving ground for many of these technologies. I'd love to see an initial moon focus, bases, space-based manufacturing, long-term sustainable living, and live video. We totally agree. Wouldn't it be cool to do this live show from the moon?
Yeah.
Right. So
We've been saying that from the beginning, haven't we?
Oh, no. I think in the first episode or shortly thereafter, talked about how one of the goals is to do Spacevidcast from the moon. We need to position the studio in such a way that Earth is in the background. And the funny thing is Earth will always be in the background then. So it's the best set ever because the Earth doesn't really move that much. It'll kind of wiggle a little bit and that's about it. Wiggle. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. There are two sides to that argument, though,
Yes.
which is the technology you develop on the moon will be different than the technology necessary for Mars. So
Sure.
are you wasting your time on the technology for the moon when you could be developing the stuff to get you to Mars? Right? Because lunar regolith is different than Martian soil.
Sure.
And you got to deal with lunar regolith. You don't need to deal with that on Mars.
Right.
Mars has, they both have water. But Mars actually has more gravity.
Yeah, but I think they're similar, and I think they're similar enough. You know what I mean? There's plenty of technologies that we have developed for living on the International Space Station that have been modified for life here on Earth, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's the same kind of idea at that point. It's similar-ish.
Similar-ish. Yeah, I guess that's the flip side of it. Is a lot of it is similar.
Digging for ice, make ice into water, going to be the same. Mars.
No,
moon.
it's going to be similar.
Well,
it's not going to be
similar.
the same. It's going to
You're
be
right,
similar.
it's not gonna be the same
because
thing.
that regolith is that's nasty stuff.
Sure, but the regolith, I mean, if you can get over moon regolith, that's easier to get over than Mars soil, yes?
I assume yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're going to be similar enough where it still makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, then it would be kind of cool.
Because I said so. Yeah. That's why.
Then it'd be kind of anyhow.
Duh.
This one comes from. Did I skip one or did you skip one?
You
Tim?
skipped one.
I skipped one.
I see what you're saying. Dunno.
Oh yeah. So that one is from Superimon. Says, Ben, you have no idea how much a cup of coffee costs? When's the last time you went to Starbucks? I don't need to go to Starbucks because at the rocket factory I work at, we have premium coffee that is given to me for free. Thank you very much.
So for him, free.
For free. I do not pay for coffee. I have no idea. I feel a little bit bad, but yeah, the rocket factory likes to keep us caffeinated so we can keep going and work however long it's necessary to get the job done.
Free coffee.
Free coffee. Really good coffee, too.
Only when I make it.
Yep. Mr. Macabar says Soyuz seats cost $20 million per flight. We had mentioned last week's show that Soyuz seats were up to $70 million per flight. Soyuz seats at one time back in 2006 cost $23 million per flight.
But I think this also came from the comment you were saying that if Russia is charging NASA $70 million per flight per seat.
Per seat. Yep. Per seat.
Per seat. Doesn't that take care of the rest of the Soyuz bill? You said something along those lines.
I understand. So maybe he's saying, okay,
but the total
bill would be, well, yeah, then it would take care of the whole cost of the mission. If that's what he's saying. Actually, I don't think they've released how much it costs.
It's hard to tell.
I don't think they've released how much it costs to fly a Soyuz mission. Okay. So without looking at their financial, maybe they have and I just haven't seen it. Without looking at their financials, I don't know this. But that $23 million is very specific, and that number was true in 2006 but has not been true since 2006. They have been increasing the price of those flights steadily. And when NASA got on, it was
even if it
40
costs
million.
23 million, they're still charging NASA 70 million.
They are now. They
So-
were originally charging 40 some odd million to NASA,
Right.
and then it bumped up to 60 million for
Yep.
NASA. And now, as of right now, if NASA wants a seat on a Soyuz, it is $70 million. Russia is really good at capitalism.
Yep.
They're really, really good at it. And yeah, well, you might think, oh, well, the price isn't going to go up that much. It did.
'Cause it can.
It has, because it can.
It can.
Yep. Bill Hughesley says, sorry, those two paper rockets, and this is in reference to the Space Launch System and SpaceX's next super heavy lift rocket that they haven't really announced, cannot be mixed together in the same basket. While the price point of the SpaceX heavy lift rocket inspires and empowers new and interesting payloads, the Space Launch System price point eats them. That's in reference to Space Launch System will be so expensive to fly, not just expensive to build, but so expensive to fly, we haven't been able to actually afford any of the payloads to put onto it because we funneled all the money into the rocket, and now we have nothing left over to put stuff on top of the rocket. I don't think that's a fair comment because you can't compare a paper rocket to a paper rocket. Until the rocket's real, it doesn't matter. And I could come up with a paper rocket that's even better than anything else you've ever seen. If I never build it, it's still just a paper rocket. So whoop-de-doo. So paper rocket versus paper rocket, I do think can be thrown into the same basket because they're all on paper. Once it's built. Now, keep in mind, Space Launch System is being built right now. So we do give it a hard time. And actually, we did get, I'll talk about this later, we did get an email like in a future episode, we got an email saying, "Hey, maybe we should have a debate." We bash on SLS a lot. I don't think we bash on SLS. I think we, at least we try not to bash on SLS. We're not saying SLS is the worst thing ever. It should never fly ever.
I think we're critical of
We're
SLS.
We're critical of SLS, but we're critical of other programs as well when they do silly things. And SLS does a lot of silly things. But they said maybe you should have a debate of a pro SLSer and a con SLSer on the show at the same time. And as long as we can keep it civilized, I think that's actually a good idea. But it's hard to find pro SLS people. The engineers we know that work at NASA do not like SLS. Most of the people we know are like, what is this thing? This doesn't make any sense. So actually, it's, I'll just do it now on this episode. If you know people that are pro SLS that are not emotionally, they're not going to get into an emotional debate. A logical, well thought out debate. Like a civilized debate. We need someone on the SLS side, and we need someone on the not SLS side. That doesn't mean SpaceX. That just means
just
everything else side.
Sure.
I think that would be a great debate to have live on the show.
And keywords we're looking for the pro SLS are not people who say, well, it's because NASA's doing it.
Yeah, and that you get a lot of that. There's this history behind NASA, so because NASA and it's not
NASA's
like,
always done it, so NASA's going to continue to do it. That's not really an argument, first of all.
that's a common mistake that a lot of people make.
It's and that's not something we would want to support here.
But I actually think it would be a good show, and we don't understand us to say that we think SLS is terrible and everyone who works on SLS is terrible. And
No.
If there are ways to fix SLS, if the senators release control of the design of SLS, at this point it doesn't matter. That we're at basically the final review stages where they can actually start to build it. So all right, so that's not going to happen. So then let's give NASA the funding necessary to both build it and maintain it and fly it, build it and fly it with payload. If we actually funded it all the way, that would be a little bit of a different story as well. It'd be very expensive, but that's how government is. But they haven't even done that. So now we've got this monstrosity of a rocket that we can't afford. If we can suddenly afford it, it's a little bit of a different story. But in all fairness, it's on time and on budget. Ish, right? It depends. It all depends on how you look at the numbers. So, yeah. I mean, anyhow. All right. I went like this. I'm sorry, guys.
Sorry.
Right over your face, just like that.
Yep.
All right. Final comment. I know we're running long on this show, but you guys love us, so we're just going to keep going. This one comes from Derek Jogen Cummings. Derek, how would you pronounce that?
I would say Joan.
Derek Joan Cummings says, I love the show, but half of it is you asking for money and going on break. Well, in all fairness, The breaks are actually interesting things, like that 30-second commercial for the launches tells you when the next rocket launches are happening. And we use the breaks as a way to slice the show into 3 different segments so that you can kind of get a feel of what's going on inside of it. So I think the breaks make sense, and they're not very long. Half of it is asking for money. I don't think that's fair either. Although you're not the first person to say that we beg and plead for Patreon funds too much. So we toned it back this week. I hope that was acceptable. The trick here, we're still playing with the format, right? We don't know, and constructive criticism is always welcome. If we're doing harping on Patreon too much, you know what? Just let us know, and again, in a civilized manner, be like, dude, a bit much, and we'll tone it back. I will say, look at it from this perspective also. Your Patreon dollars are what help make this show go. And the competitive side in me looks at things like these technology shows that are on Patreon. And they're awesome. They're fun. I love watching them and I contribute. But they're at thousands of dollars per episode. We're at hundreds of dollars per episode. And in my humble opinion, science and space, way cooler than technology. Technology is fun and awesome. But this is the thing that will forever change humanity. Technology, it can change humanity, but it doesn't have the same impact as space. And I would love to see the science and space shows, not just Spacevidcast, all of them. This Week in Space is on Patreon. That's awesome. Universe Today, they're on Patreon. I'd love to see all of these shows just kicking butt and being on the homepage of Patreon because they're large enough to be like, we matter and we're a big deal.
Well, and the other thing is that we also want to make sure that we give really good thanks to those of you who have already contributed. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you the thanks that you deserve for helping us, because we're just 2 kids from podunk nowhere who literally started this show in their mom's basement. And now here we are, and it's amazing, and we have you to thank for that, and we want to make sure that we get that to you.
It does. Every dollar means a lot to us, and now I'm actually ending up talking about Patreon a lot. But I did it at the very end of the show on purpose. We'll scale it back for you guys. We're looking. Someone said you could do a crawl at the bottom of the screen so you don't even have to do the slates. That's not a bad idea. Although, as you mentioned, we do want to highlight everyone who helped make this show happen, because without you, this show doesn't happen at all. And unlike traditional broadcast television, where they'll spend 2.5-3 minutes in these commercial breaks doing nothing but selling high-profile, high-expensive ads to fund the show, we don't have that option here. And while we'll get some low-cost ads and help offset it, that's only for 30 seconds, sometimes only 15 seconds. So it's not a lot of money in ad revenue, which means we have to turn to you to make it happen. And so you guys are the ones who make this show go. And it's a huge thank you to you. And there you go. So comments as to how we can make that work so that anyone who's visiting for the first time understands what Patreon is. And when they get excited, they understand how they can contribute, while at the same time not getting in the way of the show. We welcome those comments and that feedback as well. Hopefully you guys like it a little bit more today and felt like you got enough attention for the hard work that you guys put in. Anyhow.
That was it. That was the last comment.
Yep.
Unless we're getting yelled at in the chat room, which sometimes we do.
Oh, we are getting yelled at in the chat room, but we're gonna. What am I trying to say? We're gonna be done.
Yes.
I'm glad we're done with the show now.
Wow.
We're done with the show. We're gonna close out the show. For all of you watching live, we're going to continue with After Dark. However, very likely not a show next week. Stay tuned to spacevidcast.com/live and watch our live stream updated calendar, as well as our Twitter account at twitter.com/spacevidcast. We'll let you know if there will be a show next weekend. Most likely, no show next weekend, but it's all depending on some rocket launching schedules. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in a bit. Overloaded the engines overloaded the microphone a little bit there, didn't they? So that Proton launched on March 15th at 23:08 Coordinated Universal Time from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. It delivered the pair of Russian satellites, Express AT-1 and AT-2. Those are communication satellites for Russia. Now, if you're looking at the information bar on the right-hand side, you'll notice it is not the traditional liquid oxygen or with RP1 or liquid hydrogen. Instead, it's N2O4 and N2O4, which is nitrogen peroxide. Easy for me to say.
I was just saying, you can do it.
Blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. Well, the next one's going to be fun.
Yep, ready?
Followed by UDMH, which is unsymmetrical dimethylene hydrazine. Ooh, actually, I think I did that one okay. I was really worried. Those are actually hypergolic fuels, and what that means is that rather than needing an igniter, for example, if you watch a Falcon 9 launch, there's this green spark before the engines actually come alive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the igniter. That's TTEB. These don't need that. When you take N2O4 and UDMH and combine them, they automatically ignite. They're hypergolic, and so it is also very, very toxic, which is fun when they had the proton crash back down.
Yes.
Do not approach a crashing proton. That
Not
would
so
be
much.
very, very bad. It could interact with you in a not so fun way. So anyhow, that was the Proton rocket. It actually, in the infographic, I think it said it had been around since 1965. And while that is true, that specific configuration was a Proton M rocket, which is a little bit more modern. But I thought it's
Like extragalactic polarization, which also is not easy to say. So now we're even.
so proving the Big Bang Theory is basically what it's come down to.
Yay!
Taking the Big Bang Theory and making it less theory, more fact.
Yes.
And it's nice you need to back these things up with actual data, right? You can't just go, oh, well, this is a theory, so it must be true. You go, okay, well, we need to be able to back this up with evidence, and it needs to be repeatable, and, we're getting there. We're trying to figure this out. And looking at this kind of data is very difficult to do, but understanding our past helps us understand and create a better future, in my humble opinion. So really cool discovery there. So moving back into the human spaceflight realm of things, SpaceX's CRS, which is the commercial resupply missions, number 3 has been delayed until March 30th, but it is on track. Now, it was delayed because there was some oil found in the trunks.
The
blankets in the trunk section, and it's been cleared by NASA to go up to the International Space Station at this point, so no earlier than March 30th, barring weather or anything else like that. And one of the things, and Tim our director Dutta gave me a hard time before the show. He's like, "Are you really? You're going to talk about this again?" But it's a big deal. It has landing legs. This rocket has landing legs. It's going to look. They just look cool.
Yeah, they do.
There are 4 landing legs on the bottom of the first stage rocket. And actually, you had mentioned that Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson wasn't understanding why.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of, I don't know what landing legs on a rocket are for.
Which is funny, because when you think about it, not only does it help reduce the cost, right? You put the landing legs on the rocket, you bring the rocket back. There's another great shot of the landing legs. When you see the shot, Heritage is based on the Proton, so I gave the full.
Is that an M for modern?
Proton Moderns. They actually it might be. I have no idea.
Sorry.
Anyhow, that took place on March 15th. But big news. So this isn't necessarily spaceflight related, and we kind of tend to focus on in the show what it takes to get humans to space,
Right.
what it will take to get humanity to be a spacefaring civilization. But this is just really cool science, and so I thought we'd bring it up. And that is the Big Bang Theory. Has kind of been proven with what I'm calling the gravity wave edition, right?
Ooh, I like that. That's very good. In early 20th century, Edwin Hubble discovered that galaxies were moving away from each other, and the further away they were from each other, the faster they were actually moving, or the further away that they were in general, not from each other necessarily.
And you do that kind of using the similar concept of Dopplers. As you move, you shift light towards red or blue, and so you're able to see the shift in light.
Right. Theories were that the universe was expanding at some point, and that they had actually been very, very close. So that that's how you could tell that they were moving away, that they were very, very close to each other. In the 1960s, something was discovered called the cosmic microwave background radiation. And the idea is that it was a similar temperature that sort of permeates the entire galaxy. And the idea was that 2 objects at separate ends of the universe, how could they possibly be the same temperature unless they were at the same location at the same time at some point in the past?
Sure.
If that makes any sense. The origin of the temperature was traced to a time when matter started to bunch itself together to right around 38,000 years after the Big Bang. This was called inflation. This is the inflation theory, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah, inflation is the best group of theories, and we have to explaining what happened between the Big Bang and in those 38,000 years. In the 1960s, we measured that the cosmic microwave background was not totally smooth, but it actually had some ripples going on in it. The inflation theory says that this is a result of quantum fluctuations that intensified as the universe expanded so fast it created these ripples in the actual fabric of space-time. Another way of saying that inflation predicted the light polarization signature. Oh wait, I wrote this totally wrong.
So basically, what happened here is that after the Big Bang, we have the Big Bang, and it basically this matter is moving faster than the speed of light.
Right.
And so we're creating. Actually, go back to that graphic that we just had up. That's perfect. Yeah. So it's creating these ripples in space-time, right?
Well, it left a signature on the protons.
And so actually, what it's doing, we see these ripples, and it actually creates that signature, these rippling signatures on that background radiation, that cosmic microwave background radiation that we had measured before. And we should actually, I think it was like, thank you. By the way, that there's a great explanation of this at phdcomics.com/ all that other stuff. But right now it's on the homepage. And this comic actually does a fantastic job of explaining it. But basically, it's these ripples that go out, and we needed a way to measure this, and we hadn't been able to do that. So I think it was Einstein. I don't remember, but like 100 years ago, I think it was Einstein who said, "Yeah, there should be these ripples out there." Well, now we've finally been able to show and prove, yep, here are those ripples.
Right.
Which means this is, and there you go. Here are those gravitational ripples.
It's so cool. The Bicep 2 that was in the South Pole has been studying the polarized light in the cosmic microwave background, and they're the ones who found the signature. Bicep 2, of course, stands for Background Imaging of Cosmic.
Coming up, Proton launch.
Penny.
And China's rover is not quite dead yet. Plus, we take a look at what the Martian government may look like in the future. Stay with us. Tomorrow begins now.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. Got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and
Private space station.
And welcome to Spacevidcast, episode 7.09 for Saturday, March 22nd, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is my beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented wife, Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we'll be her hosts for this episode. Now, before we get started, we did want to say a huge thank you to the Spacevidcast Premier members. These are the people who help make Spacevidcast go. They've contributed at least $10 to make this episode happen. You can get more information at patreon.com/spacevidcast. Let's get straight into space news. The first thing up is a Proton rocket has delivered the Express AT-1 and AT-2 satellites into orbit. Here's the launch coverage.